Aloha! Welcome to the Live Ukulele Podcast. My name is Brad Bordessa, and in this episode, I want to talk about kind of a recurring theme that was recently brought to the front of my mind from a fan email, if you will. And it has to do with getting discouraged and kind of jumping all over the place because goals are set a little bit too high. So I want to talk about like expectations and setting yourself up for success and those kinds of things. It's all probably stuff that I have talked about a little bit before on the podcast, but I think in this light it'll be a little bit different, and I'm looking forward to it. Before we do that though, I want to remind you that Live Ukulele is listener supported, so if you like what you hear, please head over to liveukulele.com. Make yourself familiar with the site. There's lots of free resources there, but there's also my store where I have some premium ebooks and video lessons to help you with whatever you are interested in learning. At this point, I've got enough material that there's kind of something for everybody. And it's all, I like to think, very unique in my approach and the way that I share things. And people often say that I'm teaching them things in ways that they have never really heard from anybody else, and that they really appreciate the angle that I come at things from. So if that sounds interesting, go check it out. And if anything, go sign up for my newsletter. I call it the Uke letter, though that's kind of just my dumb tagline name that I use sometimes. I don't send that many emails. It's really just kind of a refresh of, hey, this is what happened this month, usually is what I end up doing. And then, of course, I share announcements when I have a new product coming out, new ebook, new lessons, and just new material on the site in general. Sometimes I send out about like, hey, there's a new podcast. Hey, there's this new tab that I put together. Hey, there's this. Hey, there's that. I invite you to join me. It's a great way that we can stay in touch. So I received an email last month from a lovely gentleman who shared very vulnerably, and I really appreciated this, but he shared about his struggle with learning to play the ukulele and talked about how depression has really made learning the instrument a challenge, specifically because of how it kind of distracts and holds down whatever enthusiasm he might gain from the music. And bottom line was that he always felt like he was failing at playing the ukulele and was curious if I had any ideas. He always felt like he was hopping around to this and that wasn't satisfying, and then this, and then this, and then this. And it was just a vicious cycle that was really bumming him out. And so I thought about it for a week or so, because that's the kind of thing where I, as the teacher, am fascinated by what are the tools that I can engage to try and help him break that cycle and have more productivity in his musical enjoyment and playing and in practice. And so what I suggested is something that I suggest to a lot of people, and that is make your goals more manageable, make them more achievable, make them smaller, whatever it takes to have a little win. A lot of times people really bite off a lot more than they can chew, and they go from like, okay, I bought my ukulele and I can strum a few chords, to now I'm going to learn to play Bohemian Rhapsody just like Jake plays it. And it's really easy to set yourself up for disappointment if you kind of jump in with that sort of attitude. And I think it's not necessarily that it's a bad goal or anything like that. It's more that people who are learning to play the ukulele have not been given the tools a lot of times to think about how they want to build a framework for their learning, right? So many people get started playing, they watch a few YouTube videos, and the YouTube algorithm, it really rewards that quick delivery of information. It really emphasizes the videos that are well crafted to fit the YouTube thing, but it's not necessarily from a teaching standpoint setting people up for realistic expectations of what they can and can't do now, but will be able to do in the future if you do this, this, and this. So basically what we're talking about is laying out a framework for what you want to be able to play and breaking it down into pieces that are manageable, pieces that are very bite-sized and that you can have a win with. You do a little bit, you complete that task, and it's a win. You can feel good about it, feel like you did something and you achieved that. Whereas if you try and play Bohemian Rhapsody, that's such a massive project that most people are going to get discouraged when 2 months in, they still can't play it at all, even a little bit, because there's just so many steps, so many little tiny steps that have to happen before you get to Bohemian Rhapsody. So I think the most valuable thing that I can share is examples of this, because a lot of people don't see it. I see it all the time because, people are reaching out to me and I'm teaching people and helping them get from point A to point B. And I have to think all the time, like, okay, this student's skills are here. They want to be here. What are all the little steps and all the little things we have to work on to get them to where they want to go? For instance, I have a young student who is just delightful, 10 years old, and I asked her the other day, we've been doing lessons for a couple of months now, and, we've established, I've kind of got an idea of how good she is, what she can play. But I asked her the other day, in 5 years, when you're 15, what do you want to be able to do with the ukulele? What do you imagine your life being like as it relates to this instrument that you're so excited about learning right now? And she said, I think I want to be in a band. And I think I want to play, the guy on American Idol, he was playing like the Cool Down song by Kolohe Kai. I think I want to play that kind of music in a band. And that was great because that's very specific. And it gave me a lot of kind of data for processing through the teaching side of things, what we'll need to do to get there. Not that in 5 years she's necessarily still going to want to be in a Hawaiian band, but at least for now, we have a goal, we have some place that we can go, and from there we can break it down into pieces. Okay, so I'll just do this on the fly. I'll think this through out loud with you folks. Where she's at right now is strumming basic chords. She can kind of do like a little reggae strum. She can do down, down, up, up, down really well. Play through basic chords, key of C, key of F, those kinds of things. Can keep pretty good time. I'm always happy when people just kind of have the timing thing. And we've been doing a little bit of lead picking. Like we learned how to play Happy Birthday on one string so she can focus. I found that the one string thing was really good for a young player like that. It's like, okay, we'll do it on one string. So you don't have just up and down to think about. That's all you get to work on. And it was great. She got it and she was able to focus on the timing and the execution and which part went where. And that was really great. If you want to find out more about that, check out my step-by-step single string ebook. Anyways, that's kind of where we're at. And from there, we can just keep on working on new things, new songs, working through that. Because at that age, you want to just have them playing music. So a lot of times it's just, here's a new song. And to play this song, we're going to need a little bit of a different rhythm than we've done before, or maybe a new chord shape that we haven't done before, or hey, let's try this picking. And now, you cover all the bases that you have in that moment with those parameters. What are you going to shift and what is going to be the little bit more that you tack on top of the current knowledge. But on the big picture scale, going from there to I want to be in a Hawaiian band. Well, how could you break that down? I would say the first thing you need, if you're going to be in a band like that, regardless of if you want to be in a famous band at 15, or you just want to, play on the side of the road with some friends, you're going to need some confidence in what you're doing. So just generally succeeding and ticking those things off and becoming musically comfortable, right? So maybe we'll take that tack. Musically comfortable to be in a band. You can learn a song on your own. You can play the song pretty well just by maybe hearing it, maybe looking up a chord or two online if you really need help. But otherwise, being comfortable enough to present a song yourself, right? So in order to present a song yourself and be confident in that, what are you going to need to do? What is the next step down? The next step down is, to learn that song, you're going to have to, and she plays mostly by ear. I sometimes give her sheets, but she never even looks at them. So it's like, okay, we'll just play by ear. That's great. You can always learn to read off of paper down the road. I'm not worried about that at all. But you have to train your ear so that you can listen to a song and get the gist of it and be able to capture it on your ukulele. What is going to be your part in the band, being able to figure out your part. You need to have good timing, continued good timing, so that as part of the band, you're not dragging anybody down by having, timing that wanders all over the place. Yes, you might have a drummer, but that doesn't mean that you don't have to have good timing. You still have to have good timing to lock with the drummer and to play with the music. Have to have a good enough chord library that you can move your fingers to the places they need to be in, right? And maybe you also need to sing, right? I'm just going like super big picture things. And then from there we can dial down. Let's say chords next. How would you break down chords? Okay, so if you're going to play Hawaiian music, you're probably going to be playing kind of a reggae chank kind of a strum. So usually when you're playing in that style, you're going to use closed chords. So you would take closed chords and make sure that every chord you need to play a song, you also know how to play closed somehow or another, right? So instead of playing open C on the third fret of the A string, you maybe would play a barred C, like a B flat shape moved up 2 frets. You would use that next voicing to make sure that all the strings were closed off so you can lift and mute and cut off the sound of the chord so that it doesn't last very long. That's typical to the style. So you also have to have some awareness, even if it's just subconscious, awareness of what the style requires, what the style involves as music, right? And that's, you usually just kind of get that as you go and you don't really need to think about it. But like for me as the teacher, I know that if that's what she wants to do, I'm going to have to get her playing closed chords sooner rather than later so that is that feel, that understanding of, as the rhythm player, I'm only going to be playing little short bursts of sound so that becomes intuitive early on. Okay, so closed chords, you probably don't need many chords as long as you have major and pretty much major and minor chords. You can play most Hawaiian songs. And Hawaiian, for those who are not familiar, Hawaiian is Jamaica meets Hawaiian. So it's like the Hawaiian version of reggae. Brother Noland and Brother Walter and Ho'aikane were kind of like the pioneering guys who brought reggae sounds to Hawaii and started integrating them in a very Hawaiian way. So it's reggae, but it sounds really Hawaiian, and so we call it Hawaiian. And it's gotten really super duper commercial over the years, and there's been some crossover songs, and now you have like J Boog and a whole bunch of other guys that I don't really pay attention to, but there's like Ekolu and Kolohe Kai is another big one. But it's a style here in Hawaii, and it's very prominent on the radios, and of course a 10-year-old would be all about it. So you're only going to really need those, whatever it be, 24 major and minor, assuming you learn all of the 12 major, all of the 12 minor chords in a closed position. That's not a very tall task. That's pretty straightforward. Moving aside from there, and if you were to break it down even further, you wouldn't start with, here's all 12, learn all 12. You start by learning one. Okay, here's a song that we've learned. Now it's the following week. You can play it. Let's try and take that F chord that we're playing and move it up so that it becomes closed. And we're only going to change that. That's the only thing we change because we already have the song. We've put all the hard work in for that. We don't want to undo a bunch of our work by making it too difficult. So you just change one little thing and make it more manageable. And you can focus on that one thing because the rest of the stuff should be pretty easy by now. That is the whole trick to this. That is the whole bottom line, is you try and find ways to make things manageable. Make it so that you don't run up against a wall, feel discouraged, and then go on to something else. And that is what Uncle in the email was talking about. Is it sounds like he has a musical family. He's very proud of the musicality that his family has adopted over the years. And I get the impression that he wanted to be able to, really be part of that and match that. And so maybe he had high expectations for being able to just jump in and play the stuff right away. And maybe didn't have a sense that, there are so many little ways that you can find enjoyment with music without being a top-notch performer or whatever the vision is for a lot of people. A lot of people come into music, whether it's from, I played piano as a kid and mom was really strict about making sure that I practiced all the time. Like I talked to Chris Fuchigami on the last episode, and he was talking about how his mom was very strict and made him practice all the time. And that was his perception of music, was it was like the last thing he ever wanted to do. But you kind of have to let that go. And the fact that all the music that you're familiar with is from famous people who have worked so hard and achieved such a high level in the music business and also with their songs and their music itself, that's not a very true representation of how you can enjoy music, right? So what you can do is find the ways that you can have the little wins and enjoy music in your own little way. And I really kind of try and drive this home because it's kind of the secret to happiness, as far as I'm concerned, if you're an ukulele student. It's finding the ways that makes the little things fun, so that when you're practicing the little things, instead of going, oh, this is a total drag, I would rather be doing anything else, instead you're into it and you're excited about it. It's like, oh, wow, that's cool. Oh, wow, that's cool. Oh, wow, that's cool. And you try and cultivate that sense of awe, that kind of, the amazement of the little things in the music, right? Stop and smell the roses. It's the little things in life. People say all these things, and there are musical practice equivalents where you take a little tiny thing and dive really deep, and you figure out ways to enjoy that little thing. So back to my 10-year-old student who wants to be in the Hawaiian band, just as an example. If I'm 15 and I'm in a Hawaiian band, I want to be ripping some sick solos, right? I want to be able to step out in front of the stage and be the hero, be the lead player, do the thing, right? That's what we all wanted when we were 15. That's what I wanted to do, at least. That's what I spent most of my time practicing, was diddle-a-diddle-a-diddle-a, how to, play fast, play melodic, play solos and lead lines. That's the dream. So assuming that's something that you're going for, let's take that and break that down. So soloing is a huge subject, but aside from the musicality that it requires and the kind of innate understanding and the feel for what you want to play, there's a couple of different foundational things that you usually need. The first one and the most obvious one is scales of some sort. You have to have scales inside your head so that you know what notes are going to go together in the moment to create the sounds that you hear in your head. And usually, if you're raised in a Western context or in a Western situation, you're going to have the major tonality stuck in your head, the minor tonality stuck in your head, And that's pretty much going to be the convention that your brain is used to listening to. So in order to solo, you're going to need those scales in your head. So how do you learn a scale? Well, you learn the most basic position and you play it as slow as possible. Let's say we're just starting way at the beginning. You learn a C scale, the open C scale. Okay, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. And you learn that as well as you can. And if that's too much too soon, maybe it's taking us the whole lesson to get through just learning the C scale now, currently, right? Working towards other things. Okay, that's too complicated. How do we break it down? Well, let's just play the first two notes of the C scale. C, D, C, D, C, D, C, D. Okay, let's try C, D, E. C, D, E's too much. Can't add E yet. That's too much. We're needing to take a step back. So, okay, let's go from D to E. D to E, D to E. Right? You can take these things and you can break them down into the smallest little chunks. You feel like you have to do the whole thing all at once, but you really don't. You can take a little tiny piece and put it with another little tiny piece. And if you have enough little teeny tiny pieces, eventually you can start putting them together. So the tiny pieces are small pieces, and then put those together. So the small pieces are medium pieces. Then the medium pieces can become the whole piece, and you can see everything. So I'm saying this out loud, but if I was to play it on the ukulele, it would sound just like this, right? C to D. And I would do that until I was completely comfortable with it. And if that's too fast, you go slower. And while you're doing it, instead of thinking, this sucks, I'm horrible, you should be listening to the music that's happening and observing what is happening and hearing the nuances of that. Because if you focus on anything else, if you focus on the big picture and how bad you're doing, it's going to be discouraging. That's just what's going to happen. So instead, what you do is like even I, right? I'm not a phenomenal ukulele player, but I'm pretty competent. And even I, while I was playing that, in my head, I wasn't thinking, oh, this is boring. I'm just giving an example from my podcast. I'm thinking, I'm playing these notes. What do they sound like? Do they sound nice? Can I make them sound nicer? How would I make them sound nicer if I were to do that? And there's such an infinite amount of perfection you can put on any little thing like that there's no reason for anything you practice to ever feel boring. If you have to go slower, go as slow as you need to go. Even Flight of the Bumblebee is super easy if you slow it down enough, right? It's just a bunch of notes, but if you take two notes back to back, you slow them way down and you learn to play them, and then you play the next two notes and the next two notes. Slowly you have this kind of these pieces of the puzzle, and you start putting them together. Two pieces, two pieces, two pieces, two pieces, and now you have four pieces, four pieces, four pieces, right? It's just kind of this fractal pattern of figuring out how you can break something down enough that it's bite-sized and you can have that little win, all right? And so this goes back to the email. You need to get to a point where you can feel like going C to D, where that feels like, if that's what you were trying to do, then that's your win. And then you can feel like, oh, I practiced that for 5 minutes. I've got it pretty much down. That's it, right? If that is your goal, you can achieve that goal because it's small enough. There's nothing worse than setting a goal that's too big and then you feel discouraged and you feel like you didn't achieve it. You know, for very few people, the ukulele is actually their job or their way of paying the bills. So unless you're one of those very few people, why would you put the pressure on yourself to need to do something at a rate that is beyond what your skill is? It's better to do something simply, break it way down, make it way slower, and to achieve that, and then move on to the next little piece, instead of being eternally stuck in, wow, this is all way too much for me right now. I'm going to try it for a little bit, but I can't. I'm too frustrated. It's too much. And then you go on to try the next thing, where it's, if you're going from thing to thing and they're all at a similar level of difficulty, you can't expect to succeed at any of them if you fail at the first one. I mean, repetition is wonderful and all that, but if you just can't do it in the first place, you need to take a step back so that your repetition can lead you towards more skill, as opposed to just practicing all the mistakes. You're going to continue making the mistakes. You're going to continue feeling like you can't do it. So C to D. Now I've added the E. Now I have 3 notes in my scale. Maybe I go up and down them just to kind of show off a little bit. Okay, I'm feeling confident in that. What if I go to the next note and I add the next note? I add the F to the scale. That is one more little step. It's one more little win that I had. And if you're going really slowly, you might not do all of that in 2 minutes like I did. You do that from one day to the next day, or from 1 week to the next week. It really doesn't have to be a lot, is what I'm getting at. Is if you can find the joy in that and you can hear, oh wow, that's 4 pretty notes together. I'm playing the ukulele. I have time to play the ukulele, which means I probably don't have to do anything else. I'm just cruising. I'm having a good time. What's not to like about that? So kind of flip the script, if you will, on what you're practicing. Realize that you're probably never going to be Jake. That's okay. Take it slow, and you can have, along the way, as many wins as Jake has had. Even if he is at such a high level, you can still appreciate those little things that he also appreciated along the way, right? And I guarantee you that he still appreciates those little things along the way. We're all, once you get to a certain point, you realize that there's really not much more to learn about theory, or to learn about technique, or to learn about this, that, or the other thing. It's all about the music that you can make with those things and all the different little possibilities that you have in putting those little things together. If you don't have a grasp on those little things, you can't make the big things. So it all really comes back to and doing that as well as you can. If you can do that, you're in really good shape. But it's getting your mind more than anything to a point where you can understand what that challenge is. Okay, so I'm feeling discouraged, I'm feeling distracted. Am I feeling those things because I don't want to play the ukulele? Am I uninspired to play the ukulele? Or have I just bitten off a little bit more than I can chew, and I need to take a step back, take what I want to be able to do, and figure out the 10 steps that lead up to it. From there, you can make a plan. And if you can't make a plan, that is what a teacher should be able to help you do. So all of that to say that it's really important to manage your expectations. You know, we've talked about kind of the breaking things down side, but on the other side of the coin is just your overall expectations. Be real with yourself and think about realistically who you want to be as the ukulele player. If you want to be a professional level ukulele player, you need to be ready to put in a professional amount of practice time, right? The guys that you see out there in the world playing, they're putting in lots of hours every day. And if it's not lots of hours on a certain day, it's on average lots of hours every day. The more you practice, the better you get. And so if you watch somebody like James or Tobias or Jake or whoever, you're looking at a lot of hours with an instrument in your lap every day on average. If you want to be a little bit less than a super duper talented professional player, maybe you want to be able to go to a jam session and rip a solo and play some cool chords, comp some cool chords, right? You're looking at maybe not lots and lots of hours per day, but maybe an hour every single day that you put towards it. And, of course, this kind of depends on where you're at in life. Maybe if you're my 10-year-old student, an hour of practice is the equivalent of 5 hours of practice for somebody who is 60 or whatever. That's just how aging is, right? As your brain kind of gets a little bit more stuck, it doesn't quite adapt to new things as well, though we should still try, of course. But it just, and I find that I'm trying to go back and learn Hawaiian right now as a 30-year-old. And it's a lot trickier than even when I was like 19 in school going to Hawaiian class, and it was like, oh, this is easy peasy. It just stays right in my brain. It doesn't as much even 10 years down the road. And so I really am starting to kind of see and be able to empathize with older players who are coming at the ukulele later in life. And you just have to realize that your practice time may not be the same as my 10-year-old student's practice time. That her mileage might go way further just because of the age. And that's just the way it is. There's nothing wrong with that. We can't resent it. It's just, that's how it is. And we need to find a place in music where we can be happy, wherever we're at. So it always warms my heart to hear from people who talk about playing simple and how they're really enjoying the ukulele and they're just taking it really slow, learning everything really well. For me on my side, I usually hear from people who are working through lessons or working through one of my ebooks, and they have there's a specific set of XYZ that they're actually working through. And they say, yeah, I'm doing each lesson one at a time. I'm really taking it slow so I can master everything, make sure I've really got it super duper down. And for me, that really tickles me, because it's not super duper rapid improvement. You're not going through the whole thing in a week and then at the end you're just, super awesome. It's that slow, steady pace and the ability to find the fun, find the joy in playing it very slowly. To me, that is kind of a more empowering and inspiring thing for me to hear, is folks who are just taking their time, finding the joy in the little things in music. And really, if you can just play C to D, C to D, try it. C to D, C to D. And see if you can find the happiness in that place. And then take that on to everything that you do. Find how small you've got to break it down and go from there. Collect yourself some pieces. Don't work on, if you're learning a song, don't necessarily work on it from beginning to end. Maybe you have to play the first, especially if you're working on a finger-picking style song or something along those lines. Learn the first measure. Play that really well. Then play the second measure. Learn to play the second measure really well. Then learn to play the third measure really well. And don't try and necessarily put them together just yet. Just have the pieces. And then once you kind of have a collection, you can play the whole first part or the first phrase together well, right? You just find out how small you've got to go, even if it's just 2 notes back to back to back, as slow as you've got to go. That is the place to start. And I think that if we can all just give ourselves the patience and the grace to find the happiness there and realize that, it might not be much, but it's mine. And it's pretty cool because it sounds nice. And if it doesn't sound nice, focus on your tone so that anything that you play sounds kind of nice and you don't hate it, right? If it's like a scratchy, gross sound and you're picking with the tip of your fingernail, play with the flesh of your finger, flesh of your thumb picking through the strings. File your thumbnail so that it glides right over. I see so many people who sound terrible because they pick just by like snagging the string on their thumbnail. And they have like itty bitty little thumbnails, like, I can't grow my thumbnail out, but they still try and pick with their thumbnail. Just play with the flesh of your finger and it's going to sound way better. And usually people play a lot quieter. And if you project outwards, you play confidently, play loudly, even if you don't know what you're doing, even if you're playing something simple, you play it out there like you're owning it, like it's yours, like your life depends on it. It's going to usually sound better. I mean, provided you're not like really super duper banging on it. That's obnoxious. But short of that, playing out, projecting out, really helps with the perception of the sound that you're creating. So if you can get to a point where your tone sounds nice, then anything that you play slowly can be beautiful. Anything that you have to break down can be beautiful, can be joyful. So that might just be a lot about nothing, but it was kind of a fun exercise to think about how I could help this gentleman find more satisfaction and find some wins with his playing. And so I wrote back and shared with him some of these things. I'll probably even forward this podcast to him. And I hope that they were helpful, useful. And if he's out there listening, I hope he realizes that I really appreciated that note, appreciated his vulnerability, and I wish him the very, very best in working through what he's got to work through. So thank you for tuning in. Once again, my name is Brad Bordessa. I run liveukulele.com. I run the Live Ukulele podcast. I make all this stuff. I am the guy. I don't know why I'm sharing that, but it's true. That has been the case for a long time. I am the guy with the orange website, the ugly orange-brown website. Yeah. Anyways, hope you enjoyed yourself. If you made it this far, thanks for sticking around, and I'll catch you in the next episode. The Live Ukulele podcast comes out every first and third Saturday. And if you're not already, please subscribe so you don't miss any episodes, and or sign up for my newsletter so that when I feel inclined, I will let you know about new episodes and other things. So, wishing you folks the very best out there. Keep the joy a-flowing, keep the strings a-strumming, all that good stuff. I'll catch you next time. Ah, hui ho.